Uber is a racist company. I understand that sounds controversial as hell, but we're going to go into the actual details and how researchers have come to the conclusion that both Uber and Lyft, when it comes to deactivating drivers, are practicing discrimination up to and including racism. What up, folks? Once again, it is your boy Tim with another ride-sharing video. Now, let me be clear. This is not simply based on some wild accusation. This is based on researchers looking at the data, and Uber actually copying to the research seems to be accurate, and they're going to try to get to the bottom of why folks of color are being discriminated against when it comes to deactivations. Now, it comes from a Market Watch article talking about how to get reactivated on a damn app. But here is what the researchers have found. The researchers also found that Black, Asian, and Latinx drivers were reactivated at a higher rate, 49.6%, than white drivers at 33.6%. We argue that this finding reflects a racially biased practice of driver deactivation. Now, I like how they did it in reverse, because it's a good chance that Uber and Lyft are deliberately masking or not providing who the hell gets deactivated. That's an awful thing to talk about. But they'll tell you who got reactivated. And they were able to look at who got reactivated and notice Black people are getting reactivated at a much higher rate. Hispanics, Latinx are getting reactivated at a much higher rate. Now, we could argue, well, that doesn't mean it's racism. It means that Blacks and Latins are actually getting the benefit, whereas whites are only getting reactivated at 33.6%. Well, as the respondent talks about, the fact that you are reactivating Blacks and Latinx people at a higher rate shows you're probably deactivating them at a higher rate as well. That's why you can actually reactivate 10-15% more folks of color than whites, is because they're the ones that's getting deactivated. Obviously, it leaves plausible deniability to Uber, but they're not even taking that route. They're actually admitting that it does look suspect as hell and that they're going to try to work on it. But I like the way the researchers reversed it to show if Blacks and Latin people are getting reactivated at a higher rate than whites, that clearly means they're getting deactivated that way as well. Now, it continues. Weber expanded on that in an interview. What it shows is that drivers who are being deactivated, not for good reasons, are drivers of color. He said there is either a significant racial bias in the algorithmic decision-making or potentially a very strong customer bias, like complaints levied against drivers that don't look like you or speak like you. Let's just tackle the elephant in the room. If you are an immigrant new to America and you can barely speak the English language, the discrimination against you is going to be off the chain. There has been discrimination against cab drivers with strong accents before most of us were alive. Immigrants in this country have faced discrimination since the country was founded. Not just Black, not just Hispanic. They were doing it against the Irish, the Italian, you name it. This country has always been closed-minded towards newcomers. We can talk about maybe other countries around the world do some of the same shit, but we're talking about the United States right now. And this country has always had a problem with newcomers coming to the country. So if you are an immigrant driver and you have a strong accent from anywhere other than maybe France or England, people are going to have a problem with you. It is what it is. So the idea that it could be customer issues making bullshit complaints against people that don't look like them or speak like them, yeah, that's highly likely. Same thing with my Middle Eastern drivers. If you're wearing a turban or you're wearing Middle Eastern gear, you got something in your vehicle that indicates you're from the Middle East. Maybe you got an Iraqi flag or something on the dashboard. That shit will get you discriminated against all day. So understand that certain things in your vehicle can also lead to you being discriminated against. African Americans playing hip hop or rap music. You get the wrong customer in your car and they're making up bullshit against you. We live in a discriminatory country. It is a discriminatory world. So understand that when they suggest it could be passengers making up shit against folks that do not look or speak like them, there is a very realistic possibility that that happens to a hell of a lot of drivers. Has it happened to you? Do you feel, and you could even be white and be a victim of racism. Anyone can be a victim of racism. Anyone can be a racist. Have you ever been driving, received a complaint, or even bad conversation from someone, and you're like, that motherfucker's racist? Have you ever had that happen while ushering passengers around? Or maybe had somebody in the car and you seen them talking about somebody outside and made a comment like that? I'd love to see what you folks have to say. I don't think I have. But when you start talking to folks in detail enough, sometimes people will say shit when they get comfortable with you and they don't even realize how bad it sounds. So I'm going to ask you folks, have you ever had anything like that? Last but not least, the article also talks about the possibility for algorithmic decision making in the app. In other words, did Uber or Lyft put something in their app that could lead to folks being wrongfully deactivated from the app based on their actual race or country of origin or something of that nature? Now, obviously, Uber immediately denies that. Yours truly, in my humble opinion, hell yeah, it's possible they could do that. Absolutely possible they could do that. If you have an area, let's say a southern area where you know it's a hell of a lot of strong biblical conservatives, and you got a host of African Americans or a host of Latins or a host of immigrants trying to become drivers in that area, Uber and Lyft are capitalist countries. And because they don't have much oversight, they're going to do whatever they can get away with to make money. We've seen a host of issues, and I'll go over those shortly. But if they feel like the passengers in this particular area do not like certain type of drivers, do I believe that Uber or Lyft may try to get those folks off the platform? Hell yeah. And I'm not just making that up to throw bullshit at Uber or Lyft. Here are some of the things that are awful that they have actually been caught doing. Everything from raising the surge price that passengers pay based on how the battery life in their phones are doing. So if you got a battery that's low and you're trying to request an Uber or Lyft, particularly Uber, they raise the price up of the surge because they know your ass ain't got much time before your battery dies. So you're willing to pay anything to get that driver to come to you. So they actually have been caught raising surges based on a passenger's battery life of their smartphone. Stealing tips. Absolutely have been caught stealing tips that passengers allocated for drivers. Or if you get a big ass tip, they will secretly sneak and reduce how much you earned at the fare. In other words, you got a $10 fare, passenger gives you a $20 tip, you should get $30. All of a sudden, you get the $20 tip and the fare suddenly becomes $6. They've been caught doing that. Lowering the base fare during surges. Once again, if you got a $10 trip and you're in a 3-time surge, you should be able to do multiples of $10. Should be an easy formula to figure out. What they've started doing is lowering your base fare during surges. Once again, it's not allegations. This is shit they've been caught actually doing. Same thing when it comes to telling you how long it takes to get from point A to point B and distance. They've been actually caught lying about the distance and time it takes to get to locations. If the driver is paid a certain amount of money for how many minutes he spent behind the wheel taking a passenger from point A to point B, or how many miles it takes to drive from point A to point B, obviously lying about that can work in Uber's benefit. They have been caught doing all of this stuff. Last but not least, they started out lying about how much drivers could actually make as a rideshare driver to begin with. When I started driving, they were telling drivers the average Uber driver made $90,000 per year. I've posted several times on several videos about how they had to pay $20 million to the Federal Trade Commission for being caught in that lie. So is it possible that Uber or Lyft may play musical chairs with certain types of drivers to fit certain communities? I absolutely believe that. That is one of the biggest detriments to us drivers as independent contractors, is the lack of oversight that these companies have. They are capitalist countries. They're trying to make money. Capitalism never was about doing what was right. It's about making money. So the lower the amount of oversight, the more things people are going to push. Hell, I dump waste in the river if there's no oversight and I can save money for doing it. You need oversight. There's no oversight in the ride sharing business. So if they can put the right type of drivers in certain areas to appease customers that may have some type of racial bias or some type of country of origin bias, they'll do that. Because there's no law preventing them from doing it right now, or there's no way to get caught. There may be a law, but it's damn sure it's difficult as hell for them to get caught. Shout out to places like Seattle, Washington, Chicago, Illinois, California that has tried to pass legislation that gives the rideshare drivers some form of arbitration and third-party representation anytime they're deactivated. Because if you get representation and you have some company that is constantly getting drivers reinstated, racism, discrimination, bullshit like this will stand out like a sore thumb. For a driver, you're only going to try to get reactivated once or twice every blue moon. But if someone is doing this for a living, reactivating drivers that were wrongfully kicked off the platform for a living, they will easily notice all of these people coming in here seem to be black, or they seem to be Hispanic, or they seem to be Afghanistans or some shit. They can see that. So third-party representation is valuable to getting to the bottom of this. But as I stated in the beginning of the video, Uber actually gave a response suggesting that the research does appear to be valid and they're working on getting to the bottom of it. So they are admitting, yeah, it does seem like we're discriminating against certain groups of people. Now, they're clearly claiming no wrongdoing. We get that. But I do believe the shit is partially in their algorithms. I do believe that. Because as I stated, it can make them more money where you know certain types of passengers are going to be more comfortable with certain types of drivers, as opposed to, sending the wrong guy to the wrong neighborhood and letting that woman or that passenger decide to get on the bus or, jump in a friend's car. You don't want to lose that customer. So you're going to send this person the type of people that they may be more comfortable with. I believe Uber and Lyft are capable of doing that. But what about you? Am I getting it wrong? Do you think Uber, Lyft are incapable of doing some shit like this, deliberately discriminating against passengers to make a few extra bucks? You think I'm kind of jumping the gun and just simply talking out of my ass? Let me know in the comments, because I'd be curious to hear what you folks have to say. As always, subscribe to the damn channel. See you in the next video.
For the love of money.